I believe Councilmember Kunto is online. You see him on there? David, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. And have anyone heard from Jared?
Said to be here. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Any questions about the agenda? Tansy, anything from you?
Only one brief thing. You did receive a letter with recommendations for appointments to the Thornton Arts, Science, and Humanities Council. So the board held interviews and are recommending that you appoint Joel Duran from Ward 1 and Sharon Miller Crock from Ward 2. You did get their applications as well with the recommendation.
Any objection to following the board's recommendation? All right.
That's it for me.
Tammy?
Nothing for me tonight. Thanks.
All right, let's jump right into it. First one is homelessness sheltering options.
Yeah, so this is a follow-up. There've been a series of learning and policy discussions around our services to homelessness, our approach to encampments. And so this is a follow-up to prior information requested from the council out of a prior discussion about generally strategies to provide services to individuals experiencing homelessness. You asked for some additional information on city parking and pallet programs. So we have included that, and we've also done some additional research. Since that time, the Aurora Regional Navigation Campus has opened, so we have also included that information. And with that, I think this is your first presentation formally including Jessica Prosser, Assistant City Manager. So welcome formally in this venue, and I think Jessica is going to kick us off.
Thanks, Tansy. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. Tansy kind of gave the intro, and the purpose of this is really to kind of, by way of reminders and in the background of things that have been discussed previously, how this work around looking at shelter options for people experiencing homelessness aligns with the strategic plan, then an overview of some different options and things that can be done around homelessness. So the last time council was briefed on this was September 16th. At that time, there was some different policy ideas provided with different partnership opportunities with the county, and then really high level look at some different shelter options. And so council provided direction to dive into a few of those. And so we will provide those. And before we do that, just want to show alignment with the strategic plan, that looking at shelter options clearly has alignment with some of the homelessness initiatives within the strategic plan, and even higher level than that, really looking at an overall housing strategy. And so that's something else I just want to call out that we will be working on as we form the community programs department. You heard about housing choice a couple of weeks ago. And really looking at what homelessness programs exist now, what does the future look like, capacity, and sort of where gaps and needs are, and doing some of that analysis along with overall sort of housing needs as well. So this has alignment with that. You heard a couple of weeks ago as well, changes to the open space hours of operation and policy there. That was some of the policy direction that was provided last fall as well. So that has happened. And then this is more specifically about sheltering options, which aligns with the strategic plan overall. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Myra to run through some of those specific options, some of the research that's done. This is one of the SPOT team initiatives. Myra's leading that, and it's also been a really collaborative effort across departments. So I want to acknowledge that, representatives from different departments that touch homelessness in the city. So it's really nice to see that collaboration come together. And so just want to acknowledge that they did some of this research and work to get to this point.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, I definitely want to take just a quick minute to give recognition as well to my strategic team. Some of the members are sitting here behind me. And so if you are sitting behind me, you're part of my team, please raise your hand. Thank you so much for your hard work, your dedication, and for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. The very first program that we researched was the Safe Parking program. Safe Parking provides a safe place for people to park legally overnight. It does include some basic resources such as restrooms and hand washing stations and case management. We also wanted to highlight a couple of benefits and drawbacks, and I'm going to highlight some specific ones on both sides. So under the benefits, of course, safe parking is more immediate and more of a low-cost solution. It is a safer alternative to other parking situations such as tickets, towing, unsafe street parking. It's a little bit more flexible, and over to the drawbacks. Again, this is only limited to individuals who do have a vehicle. It is a temporary solution, so this does not include any type of permanent housing. There might be some community opposition, and then, of course, we have to take into account the weather because we do live in Colorado and it can be crazy. And of course, if any vehicles come up with any issues maintenance-wise. The team researched 4 different programs: Adams County Safe Parking Program, who is currently active; Colorado Safe Parking Initiative, who is inactive; Dreams of Change Program, who is located in California. They are currently active; New Beginnings Safe Parking, also located in California, and they are active. In your packets, we have included the comparative chart, which showcase all of the 4 different programs. For this slide, we are only going to be highlighting Adams County Safe Parking and Colorado Safe Parking Initiative. So starting off with the very first section, you all will see the site selection and capacity. As you all can see, these 2 programs are completely different in terms of capacity. One site, Adams County Safe Parking, has 2 sites, and they have a total of about 17 parking spots, versus Colorado Safe Parking Initiative. They had a total of 14 different sites and a total of 118 different parking spots. In terms of the staffing, of course, because they're both on opposite sides of scale in terms of the site number, the similarities are that they are intake coordinators for safe parking programs, there are case managers, and they are lot operators as well. In terms of the budget, you all will see that the initial for Adams County Safe Parking is about $94,000, and an ongoing, they do have a $1 million contract with the Salvation Army for rapid rehousing. This was a program that started since 2023, and that contract will be ending in 2026. On the other side, you will see that the budget for Colorado Safe Parking Initiative, their initial budget was $176,000, and their ongoing budget was about $170,000.
Real quick before you move on, Drew.
It's a quick question. Thanks for presentation here. On the budget and the staff, how do those correlate? That 94,000, is that covering the staff salaries, or is that an additional cost?
Great question. So the 94,000 does cover the sanitation stations, the lot operator salary, which is individuals who are being paid to make sure that there's safety in the safe parking program. It does cover case management, and there is a small portion for background checks that this number also covers.
So who are like the intake coordinators, for example? Are they new staff? Are they current staff? How does that work?
They are, for Adams County Safe Parking Program, they are current staff. So they are actually with Commerce City. They are the intake coordinators, and then they also partner with Almost Home and the Salvation Army for the 2 different sites.
Thank you.
Typically, it's not a city FTE, it's a agreement with a third party nonprofit that would operate these types of sites.
So like with the $1 million contract, who's paying that?
So that's the contract with Adams County Unincorporated and with the Salvation Army, who covers the Adams West safe parking lot.
Adams County.
Correct.
Got it.
Thanks.
The strategic team really believes that safe parking and regional partnership is the more feasible option. Therefore, we really dove into what this could look like for us here at the city of Thornton. In this slide, we included what the conceptual model would look like in terms of the eligibility and capacity with Adams County safe parking. And so they do require that the vehicle is operable, in active registration, current driver's license, and a valid insurance. And then, of course, just depending on the lot, they do have limited spaces for an RV or a camper, just because, of course, they're much larger. In terms of capacity, this is where the team started to have conversations about what would be best for us. We did think about 10 different spots, which would be about 10 to 30 different individuals, depending on how many individuals are staying in the vehicles. And we would average it out about 20 individuals per one case manager. We thought about the 10 different spots because we believe that it would be on the lower neighborhood impact. And of course, with an average stay of about 30 to 90 days per vehicle or per unit. In terms of sites, we did identify 6 potential sites. Of course, these were just the very beginning conversations about what the safe parking program would look like here for the city. And so, of course, a lot of further research is needed in terms of those sites that we initially had talked about.
Before you move on, Justin?
Yeah, my question was for the previous slide. The ongoing $1 million contract, that is not an annual, is that an annual amount or is that 1 million for the 4 years, 2023 through 2026?
It's just housing, nothing to do.
Correct. Yes, so that is just for the rapid rehousing portion of it, not necessarily with the services. For that specific program, it was only just starting in 2023 and it will be ending in 2027 for the specific location of Adams West.
Okay, and then when the 1 million was for all those years, that's not
Correct.
1 million per year. Okay,
Yes, sorry, yes.
that was.
And then Chris.
You mentioned the average length of stay is 60 to 90 days, but if there's say a backlog of potentially users of 20 individuals and we only have 10 spots, do we put any time limits in terms of being able, so someone's not there, for a year plus to make room for those that are in waiting, or how is that approached or taken care of?
Yeah, I think right now we're still kind of in the beginning stages of what this would look like. Right now, what we had discussed were that average of about 30 to 60 days. We haven't really discussed beyond that point. I know that Commerce City lot and the Adams West lot, that's their average, and it really depends case by case. There's certain individuals that do have to stay a little bit longer. And then there's also individuals that leave before the 30 days or before the 60 days. So I think in terms of this program and that partnership with them, we would follow their lead as well.
So just because of averaging, naturally, it will turn over and we don't necessarily have to worry right now.
As of right now, yes.
Cherish.
So could you explain to me the lot operator? I see there's only one on this page, but there's 2 different sites. So exactly what is the lot operator?
Yeah, so the lot operator is the person who is paid, I think, between 2 to 4 hours just to surveillance kind of the lot. The lot operator, from my understanding, it is an individual who is an active participant in the safe parking program. For this program, the one lot operator, it's only for the Commerce City location. The location for Adams West, which is located at the Salvation Army, they don't have a lot operator, which is why you only see one. On the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative, they had 14 different lot operators. They had 14 different sites.
So this lot operator is not full-time.
No, this is only overnight safe parking. And so it's only just a couple of hours throughout the night.
Thank you.
Perfect. So for the very first year, this is based off numbers that I received from Adams County. They will be presenting their numbers to their county commissioners regarding the safe parking. And so this is where the startup costs come from. We did add about 5,000 extra onto the 98,000 because we would have to do some type of site prep. In terms of, depending on, of course, zoning and permits, we might need to do like a fencing around the site. And so that's why it's a little bit higher. For ongoing services, it would be about $94,986. We did estimate about a nightly cost of about $26 per person. In terms of the services, so Adams County, they do provide porta potties and hand washing station, trash services, and then again, just going back to the staff and what they are able to provide, intake coordinators, the case manager, he provides housing navigation, benefits assistance, and so forth, and then of course a law operator. The second program that the team investigated was the pallet shelters. These shelters provide safe and private shelter. They are quick to assemble and they're organized in a form of a village, which you can see here in this image provided.
Before you move on, Drew.
Sorry, I had another
No,
question
you're
on
okay.
safe parking. Looking at the programs that you gave as an example, you gave Adams County, and then there was a Colorado Safe Parking Initiative, and then 2 from California. Are there any other ones local that we can use as a reference point for data and things like that?
So the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative is dissolved now. They were heavily funded with ARPA dollars and recovery dollars and things like that. Those 14 sites they had were really scattered throughout the metro area. And I don't know that there's a lot that are still operating. Sometimes adjacent to existing shelter facilities, there will be a safe parking component. For example, at the Aurora Navigation Campus, there's a whole separate lot just for people who have vehicles to park there. They're obviously encouraged to come inside, but a lot of them dissolved after COVID, and then also with the infusion of the 4 to 5 new navigation campuses, there's a lot more overnight shelter beds in the metro area. And so there was sort of less of a need for the parking lots.
So the funding ended, it was funded through the state entirely, or?
It was-
it came through ARPA, but
It's a nonprofit that sort of just dissolved. So I think
Okay, got it.
they had funding from several different municipalities. I'm not sure where all their funding sources came from, but they sort of dissolved at this point.
Got it. And okay.
So for
there really weren't other examples to use,
currently
other than-
operating.
2 California ones. Okay. What's been the experience with Adams County in their 2 parking lots?
In terms of us with the homeless outreach team,
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess how long have they been operating?
yeah, so when the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative dissolved, the church that was operating with them kind of wanted to keep it going because they saw that there was a need and people really needed this space. And that's when Adams County and other municipalities came together, such as Commerce City, to say, hey, how are we going to keep this program going? That's why this is such a big regional effort. The intake coordinators are with Commerce City, and then they're partnering up with Almost Home for case management and also with Salvation Army for case management. And so our relationship with them is great. They are talking about trying to get more parking lots. And so again, we're just in the beginning stages of this, and they're completely on board with helping us transform this into something that we think would work best for us in the city of Thornton and for individuals who are experiencing homelessness in their vehicles. Great relationship.
Thank you.
Justin?
Yeah, actually, have some additional information on that topic that you all might find interesting. So at the Almost Home board meeting yesterday, we talked about the Commerce City Wellbeing Team, the one that is helping out with the Adams County shelters. Well, they received a DOLA homeless resolution program grant from the state. And so now they're looking to establish a new safe parking lot in Brighton. And I thought it was interesting because when I first heard it, it was Commerce City establishing something in Brighton, and that didn't make sense. But in the context of what you said, how Commerce City, and it is kind of a regional effort, but that program is expanding and, of course, they're looking to also include Almost Home in the same capacity that the Adams County ones are. So, fairly new information, but the program that we're hearing about is growing and expanding into Brighton.
Thank you.
Thank you. So following the same outline, we wanted to highlight a couple of benefits and drawbacks for the pallet shelters. So for benefits, they're quick to deploy. They can be installed pretty quickly. They're a little bit more stationary than safe parking, meaning that they're allowed to stay on site 24/7 versus safe parking that it's only overnight. It's again, just a little bit more on the private side. They have their own actual space. Going back to drawbacks, there's a significant upfront cost, which we'll get into here in a couple of slides. Site location may also be a little bit difficult just because pallet shelters are larger and do require a larger space. Again, not permanent housing, it's more intended to be transitional. The pallet shelters are on the smaller side, so just limited space. There possibly could be community concerns as well, ongoing operational cost, and then again, just some weather limitations. For the comparative research, the team was able to talk to Colorado Pallet Shelter, who is currently inactive, Colorado Village Collaborative, who is active, and the Pallet Shelter Village, who is located in Lawrence, Kansas. And again, in your packets, you all do have that chart that goes a little bit more in depth. For this slide, we are going to be highlighting the Colorado Pallet Shelter, again, inactive, and Colorado Village Collaborative active. For the site selection and capacity, as you all can see, it's around the same range, so between 30 units to 50 units. In terms of the staff, again, there's a little difference here with the Colorado Pallet Shelter. They have just one program manager, 3 case managers, program assistants, and law operators versus Colorado Village Collaborative. They have 14 staff on site. Which include, again, site manager, coordinator, similar roles. In terms of the budget, you all can see that the initial for Colorado Pallet Shelter, 1.5 million, Colorado Village Collaborative, 1 million. Their ongoing for the pallet shelters, 500,000, and the ongoing for Colorado Village Collaborative is about 2.2 million. In terms of what the strategic team talked about is what would that look like for here in the city of Thornton. So the programs that were all researched all showcase that they were a low barrier, which means that everyone is welcomed. Therefore, that's the model that we want to continue if we were to pursue this option. Additionally, the team also believes that it is important that any individual that is referred into this program is already currently actively engaged with the Homeless Act outreach team. The team also believes that each guest should be signing in a guest agreement and a code of conduct on a regular basis. And then in terms of the capacity, again, going back, what we thought was important, 10 units, about 10 to 20 people. Each unit would fit possibly up to 2 people. So as an average of 20 people per 1 case manager. We did look at the stay and compared it to the other programs. So we mentioned about 180 days as well. In terms of the different services, so again, we're talking about mobile communal on-site showers, restrooms, and hand washing stations, potable water, of course. We would have case management. We thought about also having a behavioral health therapist on site. And then, of course, social areas, pet-friendly and private offices, so individuals can meet with their case manager or with their therapist. Now let's talk about money. For year 1, the site startup would be about $1 million, a little over $1 million. And this includes site prep, the purchase of the pallet shelters, the delivery, the installation, supplies, sanitation station, staff. So you all will see that for the ongoing, it's about 791. And that number drops because, of course, we wouldn't have to worry about that site prep. Nightly costs, we're looking at about $216. Lastly, we want to talk about the Aurora Regional Navigation Campus. This is a large facility located in Aurora. This space was actually a former hotel, which is now converted into a campus that can serve up to 600 plus individuals. This location also provides wraparound services. For some benefits, this location is centralized. People can get their services in the same location. Includes mental health, addiction services, job readiness, case management. It has a very high capacity, which is great. It is structured for a pathway out of homelessness. It's indoor and it's a regional collaboration. There's a lot of people who are involved and that's just great. Some drawbacks, this is located in Aurora and so it's about 14 to 20 miles away from Central Thornton. It's still congregate shelter with semi-private in the different tiers. And there might be some potential client concerns. Some people may be unfamiliar with the geography and also maybe that it's congregate shelter for the first tier. Aurora Regional Navigation Campus is looking at an annual partnership of about $163,000 a year. This does include transportation. This will offer about 60 individuals served per year of an average stay of about 90 days.
Before you move on, Justin?
Just interested in more details about the partnership, like, for example, are there other cities that participate just through the partnership? And what kind of, you mentioned transportation, but is there anything else offered as part of that? Or is it just access for a certain allotment of people from our community to be able to, be shipped down there? Or can you explain that a little bit better?
Sure, I'm happy to. So this is a regional campus funded by the House bill that established those 4 to 5 different navigation campuses throughout the metro area. It was a collaboration between Adams, Arapahoe, and Douglas County and the city of Aurora. There's other municipalities that are contributing on an ongoing basis. Arapahoe County is, the city of Centennial is. North Glen has already been sending folks down there as well. And so there's options to either keep your case management where you're from, say in Thornton, or use the case management services that are there. And that funding number was calculated through looking at the point in time data, if council's familiar with that, sort of looking at the number of people experiencing homelessness in your community, looking at sort of a nightly cost for providing all of the different services that are co-located there. And so the 60 individuals was sort of the average amount that might come from Thornton based on the numbers and data in Thornton. And so there's sort of, that's where the number comes from. And so looking at partnership opportunities, you can kind of see this is a flyer that Aurora is socializing around with folks of what type of funding could be utilized for this. cities are using opioid funds, CDBG funds, different types of special funding sources to be able to have it. But it was really, envisioned with the counties to be a regional resource. So again, maybe not for every person that's experiencing homelessness, but an opportunity to provide indoor shelter on that kind of regional basis of having that leveraging of funding and economies of scale, rather than every city having to build their own navigation campus. So similar ones exist in Lakewood, Inglewood, obviously Denver did one with some of the same state funding sources.
And just one more follow-up is the people that use these services, they're like coming from off the street and camping? Is that, or is there a mix? Like, do you have an idea of like what's I don't know, tier, I don't know what to call it, but like there's different, it's a spectrum of
Yeah,
degree of homelessness. So just wondering what is the main like draw on that scale?
yeah, I think people are coming from all different places and situations. Some I mentioned might be living in their vehicles, some are coming from encampments, some may have a vehicle and a job and they've lost housing and they can move straight into the transitional housing there, which is the refurbished hotel rooms on site. So kind of meeting people's readiness for housing when they come in, and developing a plan with each individual to see what tier they would fit best into as they come into the facility.
Okay, great, thank you.
Drew?
Quick question on this, and first time I've heard about this campus, so it's good to learn about it. Has there been talk for anything up north to be built, like closer to us, like Adams County? Maybe, like the human services building that they have. Has there been any conversation around that?
Not to my knowledge quite yet. I do know that city leaders, they have like a monthly meeting. It's called the core meeting. And I know that during those conversations, they're actively discussing just different services and programming that we might be able to bring up further north. But as of right now, I don't believe so.
I
Okay.
have not heard anything. I know Broomfield had some initial conversations and Broomfield's looking at reallocating some funding to the Aurora Navigation Center as well.
Yeah, I mean, because I would agree, like I think the question on the transportation is an interesting logistical challenge. I mean, I love the cost. It seems to be the most cost-effective thing, but driving in, it just seems like a challenge. And so I imagine if Northland and Westminster and other cities in Adams County are planning on sending folks there, there's probably a need closer for something like that. And I'm sure they've talked about it. I just haven't heard anything about it.
Correct.
Chris?
This was presented to us at the Adams County meeting fourth quarter last year at the Health Services Building. But at that point, things were so new, they didn't really have statistics. Through your research, have they been able to put together more detailed statistics in terms of success rates, or now that it is operating? And then second or follow-up question on that would be, do we know more about the campus now in terms of the variety of individuals that'll be there? So like if it's women and children, but then also those from the encampment, have they had any type of safety issues or concerns with that exposure? Because there's women's shelters specifically for some of those same reasons. So my curiosity is, if we were to go this route, is this the safest option for maybe single moms and children and things, or would that be counterproductive too?
I'll answer the second part first. This is only for adults over 18.
Okay.
And so there's no families associated with this. And the state house bill that created these navigation campuses were only for adults. There is very separated men and women's side of the facility with doors that close and concrete walls separating it in the tiered systems as well. And then in terms of data, we can get back to you with more specifics from the past few months on what the data was. I know in January and February, they were averaging about 300 people in the facility per night throughout the 3 different tiers. We can get some more specifics on that and any other sort of impact information like length of stay and number of people housed and things like that.
Thank you.
Keep going. So this is really just sort of a comparative piece you've seen on each of the slides, sort of the number of people served, the cost per night for the different options, the total costs, ongoing costs is kind of a comparative model looking at that piece. And then the recommendations, staff would recommend further exploring the safe parking sort of concept with what sites would be, evaluate locations, partnerships for safe parking, and then also further explore what a regional partnership could look like for indoor sheltering as well. And then in addition, come up with a funding strategy that could be included in the 2027 budget. Alternatives are listed there. Staff felt the pallet shelters were pretty expensive for the number of people served and just some of the other challenges with finding site locations and things like that. Another alternative is sort of explore a different set of programs, a different 1 or 2 of them. And then 3, thank you for the information, but not explore any of these any further. So happy to take any questions and feedback.
Real quick, Tansy, did you press your button? Because the light turns on every once in a while and I didn't see you reach for it, so I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything.
Okay, I'm thinking deep thoughts.
That's what I thought, yeah, so it just knew. All right, I have Drew and then Chris.
Last year, you gave some really great info about like homeless contacts and resources provided and number of houses and things like that. Have you provided something new or like updated as of end of last year, or I guess would it be end of first quarter at this point?
Yeah, so we do our monthly reports and our quarterly reports. I don't have that on hand, but I can definitely get that out to council.
And I guess the point is, how are things looking so far with the investment that's been provided in homeless outreach? And, you know, resource providing, all the things that are kind of working together towards taking care of homelessness, or at least getting people connected. And so I think that would be super helpful to have like with this discussion, or at least in continuing the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So off the top of my head, the only number that comes up to me is the number of people that we have housed, which is 5 unique individuals. I think that number is a little slightly higher due to the family units. But what's really important about that is just the regional partnership. I can't emphasize that enough. We work super closely with Adams County, with Almost Home, with the Severe Weather Activation Program, of course, and just the different funding that comes with being a resident assistance when when SWAP is activated. So when I think about how it's going, I think it's great. Again, regional collaboration is really what's helping us. I do think that there is an increase, and I mean, we see it everywhere. And so it's just trying to get out there and to try to connect with individuals that we have never met in the past, because that means that they're coming from somewhere. And so let's try to figure that out, right? So it's about doing street outreach. It's about connecting individuals to those resources. It's connecting to our partnerships and our other municipalities that also are doing street outreach, because sometimes what happens is, for example, 104th, on the south side of 104th, you're in Thornton, and then you cross the street on 104th and Washington, you're in Northglenn. And so something that happens a lot is that clients are just coming back and forth, right? Then they sometimes don't know if they're in Northglenn or if they're in Thornton. And so it's up to us to have that partnership with, okay, let me talk to Northglenn to make sure that they're actively engaged with them, or let's come together and try to see if we can team tag this and make an outcome even better and sooner. And so that's kind of what's been happening. But for the quarterly report, I can definitely get the numbers on the number of people that we have interacted with, unique individuals, people who are new, and the number of resources and referrals.
So Councilmember, you're looking for some kind of trend analysis, maybe
Yeah.
what has
Sure.
changed?
I can't remember the exact data points. I'll have to find that email, but it was very detailed.
Yeah.
And it showed, I think like the last 5 years of data and, you know, the number of people that you're contacting, they call like new clients and repeat clients, things like that. And yeah, on that same point, like when we're looking at safe parking, I mean, how many people are we talking about? Right? I mean, we're talking 100, are we talking 2? I think that'd be important to know.
Let me make sure I understand the question. Which of those clients
Well,
might
so
be served by
out of
safe
the
parking?
900 people, let's say that you made contact with, can we break that down? Of those 900, how granular can you get with the data to show us? I mean, ultimately, it's how are we, if we're talking about a program, but we're not really, and I didn't see the first presentation because I wasn't here in September. But are we creating something that isn't needed? That's what I'm getting at. So show us the data that shows we need it.
Yeah, so I think you will see that there are more clients that we serve than we have been able to house, more interactions with individuals seeking
And I understand that.
seeking housing, so we are gonna show that. I don't know, we could certainly, I don't know that we can speak to people that haven't been able to be served by other housing, how many of them might elect to utilize these services? Is that what you're trying to?
Yeah, we're getting there. So of the 900, are there 10 people that are in cars?
Right,
okay.
Right?
Okay,
Or are there 2 people in cars? Or 2 vehicles, things like that, like.
if
break
there's
it
any
down.
data that we could suggest,
Yeah, it shows-
okay,
Hey, here are a number of vehicle, yeah, or I guess would be people that are living in vehicles over the last 5 years, and here's how it's grown.
Okay.
Or here is how it's decreased. I mean, whatever it is, I don't care what the trend is. I just want to see what the trend is and who we're actually serving and what the situation is with those people, because we just need to paint a picture.
that's helpful, thank you for clarifying.
All right, I have Chris, then John, then Roberta, then Charis, and Justin. I'll make sure you know I got your buttons.
So I'm
Chris.
just gonna weigh in for the recommendation piece, alternative 2. Safe parking seems the most interesting to me. That's largely because the Aurora campus doesn't allow children, and I feel like that's a big piece of it, that you're unhoused and, you know, maybe the family has to stay in the car, but at least it's a place for the family versus an individual. To me, that means a lot. The distance is also a pretty big negative in terms of, you know, positives for the parking is fairly cost effective, does include the kids, and then it's local. So that way we are addressing the needs of Thornton residents with something close in proximity. So, you know, if you're taking those, alternative 2 with the safe parking and that feasibility is the route that I would go. I'm not against the Aurora one. It's just for the reasons I mentioned that I think we have a better option.
John?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Myra and Jessica, great presentation. Myra, thank you for your work with the HOT team to this point. You've been an absolute rock star, and you're doing it every day. You're busting your butt to try and help those in need. And Jessica, you know, thank you once again. We're happy you're here. You know, your previous employer, you're the one that helped create the Navigational Center in Aurora. So can't say enough having both of you on the team, especially with, you know, when we came into office with the situation from the federal climate and then Adams County, what they had to do, it's like, oh, great, what are we gonna do? And then this happened. So we have a template to move forward. So real quick, pallet shelters, you know, I know there's a nonprofit in Longmont that has them, the Veterans Community Project, but those of course are geared toward veterans. But of course, the cost, obviously. And it's not really a, you know, a long-term solution, so I'm happy. On that note, I'm happy that staff is not recommending that, so I am going to go along with that recommendation, obviously. So we have the short-term and long-term solution. The short-term would be the parking spaces. I will pivot for a second on a personal note. One of my family members is homeless and living in their car in California. So that, in addition to hearing on doors, the number one topic was homelessness. You know, this is a very thing I'm very passionate about, that we need to get folks at least in stable housing and get them resources. So the short term, having those parking spaces would be great. Actually, Heidi Williams reached out to me yesterday and texted, because she serves with Justin on the Almost Home Board of Directors, and mentioned, just a little reminder, John, read your packet. And also that, you know, they're interested in helping us with that. So I'm definitely for the short-term getting the parking spaces available, but also I do want to see, and Jessica, I think we've talked a little bit briefly about this on the side. I definitely want to see a navigational center up here in North Adams County. I said with the distance, you know, to the Aurora campus. But obviously, you know, what both Myra and Jessica, what you talked about, we need collaboration partnerships to do it. We cannot do it as a city alone, because that's going to put a big dent on our budget. And we do have to be cognizant of that fact. So what we need to do is work with the neighboring communities like Brighton, with Commerce City, with Westy, with North Glen, in addition to us in Thornton, to long-term to find a spot for a navigational center here so we can get those folks housed. So I guess I'm jumping ahead, so I'm going with alternative two, to go with the parking spaces, and then long-term start work on getting a navigational center in place. Thank you.
Roberta?
The recommendation, staff recommends continuing exploring regional partnerships. I'm just kind of confused, because it seems like what John just said is that.
I think it could be
So-
for sure. I mean, I think the regional partnership doesn't have to just be the Aurora Navigation Campus. That's something that's built and ready to go, and you could start sending people right away. But I think that exploring the regional partnership pertains to the parking, as well as if we were going to explore indoor shelter options in the North Metro area, that would also be exploring regional partnerships. So.
Okay, because that's kind of why I read it, so I wasn't sure if I didn't want to go to alternative two and it be something else. Cause that, to me, that just sounds like it's not necessarily Aurora, it could be something more local.
I do think it is helpful feedback if council members don't think partnering with the existing facility and capacity in Aura in the short term is something you want to explore. So I think there's different ways we could think about that, either partnering with Aurora to a bridge to allow more time Jessica could speak to this in detail. Something like this doesn't happen quickly, and so but I also think it's viable because of the drawbacks that were laid out in partnering with Aurora if we're not interested in pursuing what that might look like, at least as a bridge.
I don't know that I'm not interested in that. I'm definitely interested in the safe parking sites. I think that if we end up in a situation, because there's no way something's gonna get built locally in the next 2 years, right? But maybe if over the next year or two, we discover that Aurora could be viable and we have the numbers to send people to get support there, then that could be a good option until things regionally, more locally are developed. Obviously, that's not the long-term solution to keep sending people to Aurora. I assume transportation would be RTD to get people there, correct? Or how would we get folks there if we were to put them there?
They could go in rideshare, and then the Aurora Regional Navigation Campus is looking at pickups throughout the counties as well. So Northland is sending people in.
So, because there's rideshare partnerships like United Way and stuff like that to get people places, is that correct?
Yeah. I think they're sending folks in Lyft and things like that.
Yeah,
and then-
through rideshare.
Yeah.
Via nonprofits that support those types of programs.
Mhm. And then Advance is doing organized pickups in
Because
different.
unfortunately, RTD probably won't take people.
I mean, it could, and there's a stop right outside of the navigation campus and obviously stops here. It might take a while to get there.
Yeah.
Additionally, the homeless outreach team, we also have resources for both Uber and Lyft. Apart from RTD tickets, but we do have those 3 different options.
Okay. I mean, I would just go with the recommendation of staff. And it's just exploring, so it's not like we're saying today we're gonna do this, it's just looking at the budget for. And I think like in those discussions, having some of the data points that Councilmember Morris said, like what people are we seeing in Thornton that would benefit from going maybe to Aurora? For support until there's more regional or, Adams County west areas for folks to access.
Cherish?
So out of these 17 parking spots, do we have any statistics on success?
And success, you mean how many of those individuals have been placed into permanent housing?
Yeah.
I think we'll get back to you on that one. Unless Myra finds it while we go to the next person, and then we'll circle back.
Even at that, I'm totally on board for alternative too.
The staff recommendation version of that,
Going ahead with the
safe parking and regional collaboration. I'm just clarifying, because everyone says alternative 2, which is not necessarily the recommendation, right? So I'm assuming when you say safe parking and regional collaboration, you're going with recommendation, which is the top line item.
That's what I'm doing too.
Yeah.
Chris, you too?
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah.
So what is it?
The staff recommendation, which
Yeah.
is safe parking and
Yes.
collaboration.
Because then it'll be in budget.
Whoever says alternative 2 first, basically.
It's Chris's fault.
Yeah, basically just recommendation.
Yeah, I mentioned alternative 2 simply because, the pallet shelters, staff is not recommending them and with the prohibitive costs, so alternative 2 with the aligned with the staff recommendation, yes.
Justin?
Well, a couple things. I know that Cherish asked about outcomes and I was able to get some. So, this topic came up obviously yesterday at the Almost Home board meeting when we were talking about safe parking and the expansion into Brighton that is, funded for. I think they're just now in the looking for how to actually make it work with the locations and everything. And so when this came up, questions were asked about the efficacy, what are the success rates? And so we were given a couple pieces of data on that. For example, there was a big study of a program that was in San Diego, a much bigger program with like 350 parking spaces and clients. And they had a 40% positive exit rate, which means that 40% of the people who are in those lots getting the case management services and using the safe parking facilities moved on to permanent housing after their time in the program. So with that kind of program and scale, there is a pretty good success rate. That's why I think our programs in Adams County are growing now, right? We've got the Adams County one, and then gonna move into Brighton, and then there's the Commerce City one. So this would probably be the third one, maybe. I'm not sure. But the reason why I think we should for sure go with looking into the safe parking in terms of locations and partners and sites is because there's already a model that is successful in our region that's happening right now in our peer cities. So I think it'd be pretty easy to do that. I also would encourage or I think we should give direction to specifically look at the HRP grant that Commerce City was recently awarded, because I think we would certainly be a competitive candidate once we get this kind of programming. I'm not even sure how far along you would need to be in the project before you could apply for the grant, but that would be good to know. And because we've seen other cities happening right now get that grant, I think that that we could certainly be competitive for that. Opens the door for that additional partnership and evaluation. I do think we should at the very least look into that Aurora partnership. And see, what all the things that we'd be gaining out of, like the details of the transportation and how those 60 people could be eligible for the program. And then look at what that would impact us on the budget, like what are we trading off here? And what funds would it potentially come from? So I think all of those are worth going down. I don't think it's worth going down that path at the moment with the pallet shelters. So I think I'm suggesting the recommendation, but I'm just emphasizing some specifics and also making sure that we do look at that Aurora thing and see, what are the details, and also how does it fit into the rest of the budget process. But I'm very optimistic about the HRP grant and seeing this program grow, around us right now in other cities.
Appreciate the feedback about the grant. And when we say funding strategy, certainly we'd be considering partnership grants, other kinds of things in connection with also local support. So funding strategy certainly wasn't meant to suggest that we wouldn't be looking for other funding sources.
So just so I'm clear, you're supporting the recommendation?
Yeah,
Okay,
I just had a lot to say.
I just make sure I followed. All right, so there are 5 supporting the recommendation. Drew, Devin, or Dave, anything to add?
I mean, I'll say I am concerned with cost creep and like scope creep on this. When we look at, this is part of where this data will be really helpful to look at trends, and also trends in how we funded things over the years. Like I know, for example, was it 2023 that we doubled TAF funding? Is that right?
Yeah.
2023, whenever it was, we doubled funding for that program, but we haven't necessarily seen a decrease in anything, right? We've seen things grow. We've increased funding for HOT, which I love what you guys do, and I think you can continue that. But we're not seeing like the corresponding results. And so, when we see something like a parking lot and are putting money towards things, there's really, I don't know if there's any amount of money that we'll spend at some point to solve the problem. So we look at funding solutions or funding strategies and grants, and then we look at real world scenarios or real world cases where like these organizations shut down because of lack of funding. It's like, I want us to be aware of where this could go, and to consider that, because this will be very easily become, well, hey, we probably need to throw more money at it because, well, there's still a problem, and then it just goes and goes and continues, and then what, right? So I think tying in the regional partnership is super important, and that's where this Adams County discussion comes in, because a lot of this looks like it's trying to solve it internally with real no regional effort or tie-in, at least not that's apparent or effective. There's a lot of resource sharing that happens at the county level, but I think there needs to be some greater push from us to expect more of the county, to even for sheltering capability or housing capability, things like that. Because we will eventually, based on like the direction that we've kind of discussed tonight, we'll eventually be looking at ourselves like, well, how do we shelter people more, and how do we, add different things? And so that's just what I see happening. So I just want us to be aware of that. And so, I mean, obviously we have 5 people that are in favor of exploring further, and I'm okay exploring further as well. But I think the data needs to show us something, and we need to paint a picture to help with that ultimate decision on if we fund something like this.
Chris?
You kind of gave me a new thought there. Have there been any discussions with like Northland or Broomfield City and County and wanting to partner on the parking lot, the safe parking? And perhaps that's a way to, maybe we're doing our own little regional thing closer to I-25 because, Northland and Thornton, our lines are blurred, as you mentioned earlier. And perhaps has there been any reach out or any interest maybe from our neighbors that would want to help support a safe parking?
I don't think that there's been specific comments or conversations specific to safe parking. I think many council members were able to attend the summit of Wake County cities. I know, Adams County cities in January, I think, or February.
A few months back.
And so the Adams County manager did convene some of the city managers to talk about potential next steps coming out of that summit. And I do believe that Adams County is planning to convene the city managers and some of the key leaders in the housing and homelessness space to talk about collaboration opportunities, sort of where there are duplications or services or gaps or service opportunities to partner together. A date has not been set up, but I would expect that individual efforts like this likely would get brought up in that, but I'm not aware of any discrete discussions to this point. I know there was a convening maybe several years ago that North Glen put together. I think only the mayor would probably be the only seated council member that was here at that time. And I do think there were high level discussions about creating a kind of a regional roadmap and strategy, but I think it did result in the development of the core group, but I don't know that it resulted in high level policy collaboration across the elected boards. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, and it's going that way, but with the safe parking was, maybe it's in Westminster, but it is one that Thornton and Westminster are partnered on, and we funded the locations there, and I was just curious to see how that would play out, but it sounds like it's just not there yet.
Yeah, on that point, actually, kind of a regional collaboration on the parking side. I wonder if Brighton and Commerce City are executing these plans already. If we utilize their sites as like test cases, since they're already kind of leading that, they can provide kind of real world after action data, use data, all the operational challenges they're experiencing. But if we have a partnership with them, at least we have somewhere to direct people that might need that in the short term. And then now we're still meeting that end state of having a place for people to go in a place that's already established in Brighton and Commerce City.
Thornton is already referring folks. It's a capacity consideration where sometimes they're full, so they can't get a spot.
Yeah, and that's great data to present in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else to add? Go ahead.
I would second what Drew said as far as going with the staff recommendation. But with the contingency that we really look into the regional partnerships way more. To your point, I think that we end up in a ditto effect every time that we kind of let these things balloon and chaotically grow. So I wouldn't want to see another program kind of do that part. So.
Yeah, and I also support the staff recommendation. I think on the safe parking, I have similar concerns, but not just on the expense, but also the community concerns related to it, because they're not popular programs. And I know even the ones that were implemented today were not popular when they were approved originally. And so as we're thinking through regional collaboration and partnerships, also think about how do we partner with our own community for something like this? But is that enough direction?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Next is the discussion regarding amendment to the liquor licensing code.
This one's gonna be coming forward. Some of these are fairly ministerial things to align with state law. Others are some policy considerations for the council. We don't have this currently calendared for adoption, wanted to get your feedback. And then given your direction, we'll work to advance whatever that the council is supportive of. So with that, I'll give Kristen the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Council. So as Tansy said, I'll be reviewing some potential code amendments to the liquor code. There are some that we need to make based off of state law changes and recent legislation, and then there's some other potential amendments. So first, the updates that we need to make based off of state law changes. First, the fermented malt beverage license. So that's your grocery stores and convenience stores. They can now sell wine. You've probably noticed that when you go to the grocery store. And so all of those licenses have been converted automatically to fermented malt beverage and wine retailers. And so it's just updating the code to be consistent with that. And then also the legislation allowed for sale of alcohol on Christmas Day. And then making other changes that relate to the switch over to that type of license. The second one is related to registered managers. They no longer have to have a background check. And so we need to remove the requirement for that in our code. And then the state statutes only require the establishment to provide notification of who the manager is and then pay a $30 fee. And then the last item is related to backgrounds. CBI and FBI do not do the backgrounds. They do, but it's through a third party. And so just updating the code to remove the reference to CBI and FBI and just generally state that when a background is conducted, that it's just a background. So some other potential changes are really kind of simplifications. The first is to remove definitions that are already in state statute. That just kind of reduces the confusion of which the code or the state statute we're looking at whenever it needs to be defined in state statute. Replacing specific references in state statute to just refer to Colorado alcohol law instead of 44-3-43 or something like that. It makes it a little easier to read. Third is removing unnecessary requirements of the diagram that are addressed when they receive the certificate of occupancy. So most notably, that's the details of like a kitchen for a hotel and restaurant. We don't necessarily care about how many ranges they have or the sink placement or things like that, but keeping in there where they're storing alcohol and whatever other necessary pieces that we need to be able to determine the actual application for the alcohol. And then last is removing the tasting requirements that are already set in state statute. So a tasting is for retail liquor stores and liquor licensed drugstores, since they cannot sell alcohol for consumption on the premise. They can apply for a tasting, which allows for limited consumption in certain circumstances. Several years ago, we made our regulations the same as the state. We don't have any additional. And so this would just be removing that so that we're just referring to the states. The process would stay the same. And then some additional potential changes. First would be to the change of corporate structure. So that is not for a new license or transfer of license. It's only if you're adding an individual or removing an individual to your corporation or LLC. Right now, the code says that the individual that is added cannot perform their duties until the application is approved. That's just not practical, especially in cases where they're replacing a person. They have to be able to perform their duties. So this changes the code so that they can go ahead and perform their duties while the application is pending. The next change would be for abandoned applications, adding a definition for abandoned applications. If there's no progress, no response, no activity on an application for 60 days, and that is with us reaching out, trying to get in contact, trying to get responses, trying to move the application along. If we just have no response from the applicant, this allows us to just kind of close that out so that we don't have applications hanging around. And then the last would be the timing for notice of optional premise. An optional premise is in addition to your primary licensed location, and it can be operational for 365 days. In our code, we require the licensee to provide notice every 180 days. We would be recommending to change this to 365 days, which is consistent with the state. And that way it's just once a year, they provide us notice, they're still operating. So with that, we do recommend bringing forward the ordinance as drafted, but if you would like, we can bring forward just those that are necessary to comply with the state law or any other changes as directed by council.
Any questions? Any objection to the recommendation? Seems pretty straightforward.
Great.
Thank you.
So we will bring this forward at a future council meeting, and then we will, as next steps, continue to monitor state law for impacts on local liquor licensed establishments. And then we still do have the restorative justice or regulatory justice initiatives, and those recommendations will be coming later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we take a quick break? The break, appreciate it. So now we are up with the fire department, talking about whole blood.
And it's just a good news story, so we don't need any council action. This is really to highlight some of the innovation in the fire department and to give you a heads up on some future communication that's gonna happen with the public. So I'll give it over to Chief Kelly.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Council. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Chief Gonzalez, but I will echo what Tansy said. This speaks to the innovation of the fire department. I think you all saw in the community, saw it during COVID, and these types of programs really extend what Theo is doing with our organization and with the city. So I'm certainly excited to talk about this.
Thank you so much for your very kind words. It's nice to see everybody. It has been a while. It has, I think, been since COVID, since I've got to come hang out with you guys. So I'm going to talk to you about pre-hospital whole blood and introduce you to our program. Before I get started, I have brought a few show and tell items. Is anybody squeamish with the sight of blood?
As long as it stays in its packet. We're
Okay,
good.
yes. That's the plan, although there has been some talk about. Exactly. So it is not real. This is all training stuff, but it will probably help explain what is going on because this does give us the capacity to start bringing blood to calls and administering blood to patients. So I'm going to get into that here pretty quickly. So kind of our purpose here tonight is, again, just to introduce you to the program. We're going to review trauma care as we perform it today, and what it's going to look like tomorrow when we're actually giving whole blood. We'll go over some key statistics. We're going to talk about our operational model and how we're actually going to deploy the blood out there in the field. And then we'll talk about some of our next steps and answer any questions. And if you have a question at any time, feel free to just jump in and let me know. So first up, why does this matter? And I'm going to get my props out here so I can kind of illustrate this for you. So again, this is just thick Kool-Aid. All right, so what we're going to talk about is the difference between current care, which is what's in this bag, and future care, which is what will be in this bag when it's real. And so why it matters is 30% of our trauma fatalities result from uncontrolled bleeding. So that's a large portion of the fatalities that we see in trauma. Hemorrhage is the #1 cause of preventable death in people under 46. The median time to that death from hemorrhagic shock, which is bleeding out, is 2 hours. And this is the most important bullet of all, is every minute of delay increases the mortality by 5%. And while that might not sound super impactful, let me give it to you in an example. So if you were to be in a car accident, and we have our partners here from HCA sitting behind us, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We are lucky enough to have a level 2 trauma center sitting in our backyard, which is awesome for our community. If you were to get in a wreck right in front of that hospital and they were to wheel you in immediately from the time of your accident, it takes about 10 to 12 minutes for them to get blood ready in the hospital, just because of the logistics of how that works in the hospital. And so that 10 minutes represents 50% increase in mortality. So think about that when we're actually going to the accident now on I-25, or, miles away from where the trauma center is located. So that becomes a very big deal. So again, how do we currently treat patients when they lose blood? We use crystalloid, and that's a fancy way for saying this is normal saline, which is basically just salt water at such concentration that it basically stays, when we give it to you through an IV, it stays in your vessels because we're trying to keep your blood pressure up. The future of tomorrow is we're going to give you what you're actually losing, which is blood. And blood actually allows you to clot, and it actually carries oxygen. So when I give you this, it's actually just diluting the problem, and it actually makes you bleed worse. And so this is a phenomenal capability. To put this in the words of our medical director, this is not the edge of the spear, this is the tip of the spear. This is the most progressive thing we can do as an EMS provider. So the evidence research consistently shows worse outcomes with this product, as I kind of explained. And so the pre-hospital whole blood is going to give us the ability to close the gap between injury and time to blood, which is what we're trying to impact. The background research for this is the National EMS Physicians Position Statement. They recommend whole blood or blood products over this, the crystalloids, as first-line treatment of traumatic bleeding. Key research findings, and I won't go through all of these, but I put these up there. This is really recent research. Braverman said pre-hospital whole blood is associated with improvement in shock index and reduced early mortality. You see the next one, 54.4% improved survival probability with pre-hospital whole blood versus patients getting blood at the hospital only. Whole blood resuscitation independently associated with lower mortality in patients with elevated probability of death. And then that last one there, pre-hospital whole blood associated with improved survival to hospital arrival and reduced hospital transfusion needs, which is also a huge impact. When we give whole blood on an ambulance in the field at the time of injury, patients need less whole blood or blood products in the hospital. So I'll be able to talk here in a second. Key statistics here nationally, and then I'll give you some here locally. So national research, this is across all programs in the United States. 54% of pre-hospital blood patients showed improved survival probability. And there were 3 times more unexpected survivors with pre-hospital whole blood. And I'll get that a little closer to home. Colorado Springs, who has a really large whole blood program, they have infused 113 patients with whole blood. That's for a total of 133 units. They've seen a 60% survival rate among their transfused patients, which is phenomenal. And 30 plus lives were saved in the first 100 days of the program. So outstanding data with these programs. Program costs. So luckily, with a lot of the work that we did during the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to repurpose a lot of the things that we acquired during that time. Things like coolers, data loggers. We actually did have to purchase this cooler because it's specific to the blood banking industry. But a lot of the gear we already owned or we strategically bought over the last 2 years in preparation for this program. Low titer O blood is what we're going to actually be carrying. And that does have a cost. We are going to get that from our partners here sitting behind us, HCA, and I'll talk about that here in a second. And the cost for that blood, we estimated between $600 and $700. And we did just receive our contract on Friday, and the cost of that is actually $670. So we have an exact cost to that. We estimate about 12 to 16 units of blood per year, and that can fluctuate depending on what our data ends up looking like at the end of the year. So that gives us a total annual cost of between $7,200 and $11,200. no additional staffing, no additional capital needs, and that the cost of this program, we can actually sustain in our current supply budget. So there's no need to increase in anything there.
Before you move
How-
on,
Nope, go ahead.
Justin,
Yeah.
I mean, a quick question, will all 8 of our fire stations have coolers of pre-hospital blood?
That's a great question. So no, and this gets to sort of the operational model. So blood is a very scarce resource. And so we have a SAM unit, that's our EMS supervisor, and the SAM stands for Safety and Medical Officer. That is a single resource unit that lives at our Station 4, so central to our city. So that EMS supervisor is going to carry this unit, and we will carry 1 unit of whole blood. And that unit will be able to go anywhere in any of our districts. And because they're so central, they can get there in such a time that that's going to make an impact on the call. If they can't get to the call, we're actually going to do some really creative things where we might meet the ambulance halfway, or we actually might even meet the ambulance at the hospital, immediately jump in and give the whole blood, because there is a time from when we wheel the patient in to the time the blood comes down from the blood bank and they get that infusion. So we're really just trying to impact that 5% every minute. So it's really, what can we do to get the blood there the fastest? So that is our operational deployment model, is our shift EMS supervisors. And so there's 1 on each of our 3 shifts. So that's staffed every hour of every day of the year. Again, it is a single resource unit. And those are our most experienced paramedic providers that serve in that role. Again, the equipment I already sort of talked about. What we need to give whole blood, this is one of our specialty coolers. And this is blood bank certified, and it is also FDA certified. And that is why we purchased this one. And it also gives us some additional capabilities. It gives us real-time monitoring. It has GPS, and it tells us how much time to excursion. So how much time we have till the blood is not at a cool temperature where it needs to be. We have rapid blood warmers because this gets stored at 1 to 6 degrees Celsius. And so we don't want to put that into somebody. We have to actually warm it. And so we have blood warmers for that. And then we also have specialized deployment kits. And those are things that we already carried. Our transfusion protocol is very simple. We get dispatched to a critical call. We assess for hemorrhagic shock, which is due to bleeding. We initiate the whole blood transfusion, and then we emergently transport them to a trauma center where a surgeon can impact and repair the damage, which is what they ultimately need. HCA Mountain Ridge is
Rick, I'm sorry,
Oh, go for it.
Chris.
I just have a operational question. Say there is a significant accident where I know we're carrying 1 of those. You can assess vitals and do what we need to see who's in most need. But if there are 2 patients, do we have some sort of contingency where, somebody else is already working on that to
Yeah, so not yet. So
prioritize?
yeah, so right now there'll be a priority tree, which is the patient most in need will get the whole blood. There is also, and I'll talk about this here in a second, we will be the second fire department to have this capability in the metro area. There are fire departments around us that are rapidly trying to evolve this capacity as well. And so they will deploy in a very similar model. And I know Chief Kelly's probably talked to you about our consortium that we have with all of our neighbors. They also have SAM units. And so once we get to a point where there's more SAM units in the entire area, we are working on a coordinated plan where we would be able to bring more blood to those scenes.
Yeah, we certainly envision a future where we have multiple resources in the north area that can administer or deliver this resource to a large scale incident, an MCI where we have multiple patients. This is really the innovation
Yeah.
getting us off the ground.
Yeah, step 1 probably of a multi-step process. Yeah. So HCA Mountain Ridge, again, I've kind of already talked a little bit about this, but they're a level 2 trauma center. Level 1 is sort of the top level trauma center, and level 1 and level 2 can take care of most of the trauma problems that we see. And again, we're incredibly blessed to have one in our backyard. They are helping us with all of our blood logistics. It is really easy to give blood to a patient. It's really complex to just keep the blood in the fire department and get it to the scene. So they're They've been a wonderful partner in helping us stand up this capacity and work through all of these complex disbursement models and rotation models. They're also going to help us with quality assurance, and we have an internal quality assurance program. So that way we are meeting all of the regulatory compliance because of the blood banking industry, and then the FDA also oversees this. I did talk a little bit about regional implementation. Here are some of the agencies that are doing this here in the state. Arvada is the closest one to us. They're our neighbor. So they started their program in October. I mentioned Colorado Springs, which is one of the largest programs in the state. Thompson Valley EMS, which is to the north of us, is probably the biggest program in northern Colorado. And then Clear Creek and Grand counties up in the mountains take care of the I-70 corridor. So that makes us the second metro area program with whole blood capability, which we're really excited to be able to deliver that. With this, and we won't roll this out immediately, and our tentative date for rollout is May 18th. So this is probably a little over a month away. We are also going to later in the year roll out ultrasound integration with our whole blood program. And so that means bringing some of the same technology that they have in the hospitals for ultrasound in a more compact mobile package, putting those on our SAM units, and they will be able to actually ultrasound patients. And what that does is it gives us a couple different capabilities. One, it's the gold standard in pre-hospital trauma care. It's going to provide the diagnostic confirmation of when patients actually need blood. And we do that a couple of different ways. The main way is by scanning one of the major vessels in your body. It's your inferior vena cava. If that is collapsing on ultrasound, it means that you are bleeding somewhere. And so that's going to help us not give blood to people that don't need it and identify people that need blood faster before their vital signs even change. We can do some other things with the ultrasound. We can scan abdomens, and it helps us with other clinical decisions. But mainly we want to make sure that we're giving the right patients blood. So that's another capability that will roll out at the end of the year. Next steps are, as I believe the city manager explained and Chief Kelly, is our communication plan. So we are going to be doing some community outreach. There are some religious and cultural groups that may not want blood products or whole blood. And so we are working on a social media plan and an opt-out plan for those populations. Again, that go live date is tentatively planned as May 18th. And now that we have the contract in hand, we think that is going to be probably the go live date. So what do we get out of all this? Reduced preventable deaths from traumatic hemorrhage. We get enhanced trauma care capability on par with the nation's leading EMS systems. This puts us in about the top 2% of EMS agencies in the United States right now that are doing this. And again, we would be the second Denver Metro Fire Department with this capability. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Devin?
This is awesome. Thank you guys for the presentation and stuff. I'm really looking forward to seeing this kind of roll out. One of the things that you mentioned there is that you're carrying the one packet that's going to be O positive. Obviously, it's a universal donor, but what is the situation on if it's somebody is A negative?
That's a really great question and a complex question. So most people can get O positive whole blood because we're only giving one unit. And when they get to the hospital, really what we're doing here is we're buying them time because this can carry oxygen and this will help with their clotting cascade. So this is better than us putting this in. When they get to the hospital, they're actually going to get their blood cross-typed and matched. So they're going to get their exact type of blood with the RH factor is what you're talking about. That's either positive or negative. So this is almost the standard donor. O negative would be the best to carry. That is a very small pool. There are only about 15% of the population carries that O negative blood, and that's a very small donor pool. So that's why we're starting with O positive blood. And so we can give this to almost everybody with the exception of childbearing females in some circumstances.
Roberta?
I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. I asked a lot of questions on Saturday because I was curious, so.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Thank you for the presentation. It's really, really a cool program.
We're excited to have it.
So if it's given in the field, our goal is to take them to HCA. correct?
Or the closest appropriate trauma center, depending on where we're at in the city. So we have some regulatory agencies that oversee our trauma care. That's, it's RETAC, it's, our trauma care consortium. And so if we're closer to Good Samaritan, which is also a level 2, we would go to Good Samaritan.
Any other questions? It seems like a really cheap piece of insurance. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you guys for your support.
All right, looks like we have some youth event funding requests.
And Rob Kolstad is representing us at the Alliance for Innovation event right now. So Kevin Forget is gonna pick up the ball on the request made a few weeks ago to provide funding support to Pathways for their graduation efforts. And it's to Kevin.
Thank you, Tansy, and good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. We are here, of course, if you remember, March 31st, there was a request made for a potential funding request, youth funding request for Pathways Graduation Gift Project. So we will review that request tonight and look for your direction. I know we actually had some youth event funding requests come through earlier this month, but just as a reminder, the program was established under Council Policy 5.3. It's intended to assist youth with either competing in or participating in a youth event, such as a competition, a tournament, or an achievement event in the fields of academics, arts, sports, leadership, or performance arts. The program is limited to $300 for an individual and $600 for a group. And of course, the event must meet the criteria listed in the policy. So for tonight's request, as we mentioned, it is for $600 for the Pathways Graduation Gift Project. This project aims to provide and recognize the achievement of approximately 30 graduating students who are identified as students who are experiencing homelessness, unaccompanied youth, or parenting students. The request will contribute funds towards purchasing gift for these students, and the average cost is approximately $70 per student. This slide just provides a summary of the expenditures to date. Right now we have, the council has approved $23,400. If this request moves forward, that would then be pushed up to $24,000, which would leave a balance of about $11,000. This is, you may be familiar with this slide. This is just a summary of all the nonprofit sponsorship and youth funding events that have been approved to date. And then just looking for council's direction on this youth funding request.
Thank you. Any objection? We got a great overview. Was it last week? 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Chris.
I just want to thank the council in general, because I know that we brought this forward and, for whatever the reasons, this is something that I keep getting more and more involved with. I'll be at Pathways again tomorrow. For those of you that were at the fundraiser last week as well, for Food for Hope, both those students that spoke, for those that hung around, they were amazing orators. I mean, they speak better than many adults. Another example of 2 students that are at that school. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for continuing to show this support for them, because I think they're a great group of individuals that our assistance is really meaningful. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. All right, that's the end of the briefings. So we have the other discussion. Any boards or committee reports?
I'm on there 3 times, so.
That's why I looked right at you. Go for it, Justin.
You want me to do all of them, or do you want me to
Do all of them.
Okay, I'll do all of them, sorry. And I'll do the short one, the version, as short as I can. So AdCog, sub-regional transportation forum. it was a fairly robust meeting. There was updates from CDOT on I-70, the 10-year plan. There was a RTD update, Dr. Cog tips of committee policy update, lots of different regional transportations. One thing what they did talk about in detail was 104th Avenue project and McKay Road open house. That's actually tomorrow, April 22nd from 5 to 7 at Margaret Carpenter. So I'm sure the city has advertised out on our social media, but that's going on tomorrow. And then of course, tomorrow we have the AdCog dinner and we're hosting it. So that is tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
We're hosting it. It's the first time we're hosting it since I've been on council. Should be real exciting.
And the last time was 4 years ago.
Yeah,
5.
yeah. So been a while, and those of you who haven't been to them, they're really fun. I think it's a good way to chat with your peers around the region, and then also some good presentations. So I'm looking forward to what we have there. And then for the NADA SPC. Let's see, I got the notes here. The NADA SPC meeting was interesting. I just want to start by saying that Elise Jones stepped down from the Transportation Commission and is replaced by somebody else. I got the name here. Let me just clear it up. His name is Carl Castillo, former City of Boulder Chief Policy Advisor for 20 years. And he will be at the next NADA meeting. Well, he's invited to attend the next NADA meeting. I would hope that he does attend. And then in addition, we talked about the guiding policy documents, clarifying, getting I-76 on there. Brighton's got an ongoing request for RTD and CDOT to have a bus maintenance facility, and there's aspirations to have it be a joint CDOT RTD. I'm not sure what that's ultimately going to look like. And then as part of our theme this year, NADA is stepping up our advocacy at different levels, and we're really going to be getting on the CTIO board and the Transportation Committee meetings, CDOT, Joint Service Letter, all that kind of stuff is coming in. I hope actually that we hear more from some of the commissioners in Adams County about regional transit options. Maybe we'll hear more about that soon. And then I think the last thing on here is Dr. Cog. The Dr. Cog meeting was also pretty interesting. Let's see, I've got the summary right here. Okay, so they talked about expanding, and we did approve expanding the MPO boundary to include Clear Creek and Gilpin counties. This will ultimately be signed up on the governor. There was a discussion about building electrification through the Powerhead Colorado. There's a $6 million Powerhead Colorado Innovation Pilot. It was approved, and this will provide around 200,000 sub-awards to community-driven projects, testing new ways to electrify buildings. So something to consider in context of our environmental sustainability master plan, that there is funding from this Powerhead Colorado project. And I know you've already applied and they've gotten awarded some grants for that program already. Then there was a big talk on RTD governance, which is that state bill that's coming out. I think it's already been, through the process, it's up for debate. And our Dr. Cog board voted to support amendments, take an amendment position that would reduce the candidate signature requirements and also ensure that Dr. Cog has direct appointment authority rather than just making recommendations to the governor. So the Dr. Cog board wanted to, directly make those appointments. More details if you'd like to know, but and then there's a legislative presentation on numerous bills that we've already discussed. So that's it.
Thank you. Others? Devin?
E470, we approved the Apple Green Travel Plaza improvement contracts to go through. For those who don't know what that is, Apple Green travel plazas are going to be taking up the old tollway buildings on E470. They're going to turn them into basically convenience stores, gas stations, so that when you're traveling through E470, you actually don't have to get off of the tollway. You can stay on the tollway, refuel, and keep going. So that was approved by our board on our last session. Then we also launched our new branded social media sites with some of the crazy things like the expose E470 stuff that I talked about once before. And then this last weekend before last, the Colorado Auto Show, we had a booth there as well with a giant display of a highway, which brought a ton of people over to come take a look at it and got some more attention about how E470 is spending the money and how things are actually being utilized throughout the state. So it was a great kind of exercise to let people know that it's not just taking money and throwing it away. So that was E470.
Thanks. Mile High Flood District, we approved the 2025 audit and several planning and drainage studies, and actually 11 project authorizations, but none of them were in Thornton. So always a lot of work going on.
We need a flood.
We talked about that too. But this is a good time to actually do construction when there is not a flood coming, so that when one comes, we'll be ready for it. And then we also had the AC rep BAP committee, what business and legislative essentially.
Yeah.
Ironically, things are slowing down because they were busy with the long bill. So there wasn't a whole lot of movement. Although I'm sure there's stuff we're going to talk about here in a moment. All right, council discussion items. Roberta?
I have a few. First of all, for May, we have Jewish American Heritage Month, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and Mental Health Awareness Month.
Any objections?
Okay, and then secondly, I just wanted to make sure, I think, I wanted to double check that we are gonna follow up on, the policy that I brought up last week, which was a policy that allows for council review of new technologies used in our city, particularly those that impact data collection, surveillance, and privacy.
Yes, we have added that to the CTL as a follow-up. I think the vehicle that might come back to you is, you'll remember that in your strategic plan, there's reference to creating a public safety technology master plan. And so that may be the vehicle which those protocols can, I think more work to figure out exactly how that'll come back to the council, but it is reflected on your council task list.
Okay, and then the second one was a request to dedicate one of our police engagement series meetings to speaking about automated license plate readers as well.
Yes, I do believe they are closing into a date, and I would expect maybe, if not by the end of this week, certainly by next week, we'll start to promote that date.
Correct. Okay, and then the last thing is kind of around the same stuff. So just kind of given the amount of exposure with community attention around flock and that right now, I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to have the chief take a look at our current APLR system and see whether it's still the best fit for the department, and not necessarily looking to dictate like what kind of tools or operations that the police department's using, but to see if it'd be helpful to have a thoughtful review of the cost and any potential alternatives, operational benefits, challenges, and what it could mean for the 2027 budget. And just having this information could help us like kind of better understand how to support the department and also be responsive to the community's issues right now.
They're happy to do that.
Any objection from council? Thank you. I'd love to get technical input from the chief. Anything else, Roberta?
That's it for right now.
Any other discussion items? Drew?
A couple questions. I continue to get conference or calls and emails and things from folks asking about e-bikes and enforcement, and a lot of complaints actually as well about their time on the trails and fear around that, nearly running over dogs, things like that. I know we have a talk or a staff presentation coming up, and I think it's scheduled for Q3 right now. So my request to council was, could we look at having that session before the summer when volume on trails and bike use will be kind of at its peak? So we can kind of talk through those options, clarifying. I think the ordinance is also talking about other ways to enforce and maybe some ideas around that.
I don't think we actually have anything calendared at this point. I know there is a cross-departmental team assessing the code and recommendations, both for education enforcement and sort of modifications to that. If it's okay, I'd like an opportunity to connect with the team and then come back with some recommended timing. Just, I'm not exactly, I'm not aware of their status at this moment of that work.
Yeah, I would just appreciate if we could do that before the summer, that'd be ideal.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I was gonna recommend the Asian American Heritage, so I appreciate you doing that. Also, I had a question. I know I emailed staff about doing some painting touch-ups, and actually, Kristen, if you have the photo, I can share that. It's over at East Lake. This is out in front of the amphitheater, right across, or I guess directly adjacent to the train station in line at East Lake Station. And so I just had a group of residents that were asking if they could touch that up. No staff support needed, no paint even needed, cost. And so I didn't hear anything back, so I just wanted to bring that up and see if that would be okay, if we could allow them to do that, to basically touch up that white, and of course, some of the black there. Any issues with that?
I don't think so. There is some language in the code and some relationship to Tashco when it comes to community initiated art projects. I did see the email and I think perhaps we were looking.
Do you mind? We had a staff conversation yesterday, so we'll make sure you get a
Yeah.
response by end of day tomorrow, but we did talk through some options and just considerations.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make it extra layered of things, just these folks want to make it look nice for the summer, so I appreciate that. And then kind of a quick question, open to input on this. I know earlier this year, Tansy, I think you sent out, or maybe it was late last year, an email about ideas to make council meetings more efficient. So I appreciate that. I don't even know like where that went or if we're supposed to do something with that. I guess that's up to the council, but something I would suggest is can we look at shortening our council comment time from 8 minutes to 5 minutes per person? And see what we
already
think.
want me to shut up?
I can't, Devin taught me too long during the meetings ultimately. So I just want to get thoughts on that.
So 8 is council decision. So we raised it to 8 a couple years ago.
I'm fine.
It was 3 before that, right?
It was actually 5. But we had someone that would do 15. And that's where it started getting into an argument.
Point of orders.
Yes,
This was colorful.
it was, yep.
One colorful.
15 minutes is a bit excessive. That would be good.
So the request is to go back to 5.
Right.
I mean, if you think about an hour of public comments, and then if each council member, which has been happening, is taking 8 minutes, we're 2 hours and more before we get to business.
Right.
So I'm okay going back to 5.
I concur.
I'm good with 5.
Yep.
So the person who takes the 8 minutes, yep.
Made the motion to change it to 8.
Yeah.
But you're shocked that's my position.
Yep.
I'm not a-
Chris, Roberta, John, Dave.
I'm good with 5.
I've never used the full 8, but I don't think all of us use the full 8, but I think if it's there and somebody had something they wanted to go on, use it. How do you guys feel in terms of then all of us aren't using the full 8 every time? So if it's 2 or 3, really saving 6 minutes.
We said that last time that we weren't gonna use it, and now it's everybody using it.
I know, I don't think.
Jared definitely.
He's never run for questions too, so like.
He's only to limit myself to 5 minutes.
Yeah, so. Well, the rest, like I said, if we're saving 6 minutes or 9 minutes, because 2 or 3 of us are using it, then. That is your one platform to speak. 6 or 9 minutes is gonna make a difference in my life. I'm already here.
Doesn't really matter to me. I can limit myself to 5 if that'll help. I don't think I go to 5 that often.
You have been lately.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can limit it to 5.
I mean,
It's just
it's honestly not that big of a deal,
Sometimes
right?
it's-
If we commit to 5 and leave it 8 for the cases that we need it, instead of everybody taking 8,
I'd be
might be
mindful
enough
of
to
that.
work with ourselves.
How does that work then? Like say, hey, someone had something that they were gonna go into,
Yeah.
it might be.
We can't police it, right? So you're given 8 minutes. It's more of a courtesy of try to keep it to 5.
I think on a personal note, I would try and keep it to 5. Sometimes we have a lot to talk about and I do go more than 5 minutes. I mean, usually I don't go that, but I still think keep it 8, but I'm gonna keep it as, I won't go 8 on my own. I think it's just a personal thing, just as long as we try and get to the point, talk about what's happening in the community and then be done so the next colleague can speak so that way we can move the business along, so.
How about if we commit to 5 verbally, and if it continues to be,
Everybody going to 8?
yeah, then we come back and revisit it because the meetings are getting excessively long and it is a long time before we get to business.
So it stays the same and then we
Stays
just
the
make.
same, but we
like,
commit.
Fade that for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just stay at
Try to
5.
turn your stuff to 5.
I can do
Fine.
that.
I don't see it changing much. I mean, it's twice we're making the change in our first term.
Please.
So at this point, getting pretty indifferent.
Justin, Cherish, you okay with that approach?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay to speak faster. There'll be times where I'll go over 5, but, I think the whole point of moving it to 5 days because somebody was not on this council, 2 councils ago, was acting in bad faith and, you know, to really use the rules against people. That's my personal opinion. And so that's why I felt like there was a need to change back in 2023, late 2023. But I think, yeah. Point taken.
All right, so it stays at 8 with a commitment to 5. Just among ourselves, no staff action on that. Anything else, Drew?
Same decision, but I appreciate it.
I will have the same conversation 2 years from now.
I mean, I only bring it up.
Or
Yes, we talked about making meetings more efficient, but also we do have the ability to communicate with our residents in so many ways. That if we really want to share something, we have social media, we have phone, we have email, newsletters, we have knocking on doors. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ways that we communicate with our residents. And so it was just an idea. So I appreciate it.
All right, anyone else?
I've got something, Mayor.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Oh, I didn't interrupt anybody, did I?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I just have in my mind, a fairly simple request. I'm asking that for we fly the thin blue line flag at City Hall during National Police Week in May, just as we do the Pride flag in June. It's a pretty straightforward request for fairness, consistency, and respect for people who serve this community every day. Each June in Thornton, we raise the intersex inclusive progress pride flag at City Hall. That action reflects the city's willingness to recognize community observances and allow expression on public property, whether individuals agree or disagree with the display. The decision has been made to open up that space as a form of expression. National Police Week is observed every May since 1962. It also is a nationally recognized commemoration. It honors the service and sacrifice of law enforcement officers, including those who have been killed in the line of duty. Here in Thornton, we have approximately 249 sworn officers that serve the community of nearly 150,000 residents. Their work is a major reason why the city continues to be one of the safest in Colorado. Thin blue line flag is widely recognized as a symbol used across the country during Police Week to show support for law enforcement. For many officers and their families, it represents sacrifice, service, and remembrance. Just adding that if we're going to use City Hall flagpoles to recognize certain causes or groups, then we need to apply the standard evenly. This is not about elevating one group over another. It's about ensuring the city does not pick and choose which viewpoints are allowed and which are not. From a general legal standpoint, although I'm not a lawyer, once the city opens up its flagpoles for expressive displays, it enters into First Amendment territory in Shirtlift versus the city of Boston. the Supreme Court made it clear that the city cannot allow some viewpoints while excluding others. So I'm just asking if that we can fly this thin blue line flag during just the week of National Police Week in May.
Do you know which week that is, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, it's like the second week. I'll have to look at the exact date for you. My apologies. It is May 10th through the 16th.
Justin, did you push a button for this? Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And I push it for.
Okay, I'll keep track of it.
Yeah, I would be okay with that. My only request would be, I think this might have already been in the request, but just want to clarify that when we do have that flag up and we like, we're gonna commemorate it with a resolution or something like that, explain the meaning of the thin blue line flag and maybe some of the other iterations, because I don't think, well, I'm not sure if everybody's aware, just like they are with other flags, so.
So you just want a resolution to go with it?
Yeah, I think having a resolution to go with it and with like an explanation of what we're doing, would help. Cause then I think that mirrors what we do with the pride flag, during Pride Month, so, yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Any objection to that approach? Flying the flag for the week with a resolution to go with it?
It's on the back of my truck every day. So.
All right. Anything else, Dave?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. No, that's it. Thank you very much. And I'd be happy to read that resolution. So thank you.
Thank you. And Justin?
Okay, yeah, I've been getting a lot of questions, through all sorts of different channels about the, news coverage on the, investigation into the, block searches, and so I know I'm not asking about details, but I was hoping the staff could just give a broad overview of what that an investigation means, because I'm getting questions about who's doing the investigation, what's happening, what do we expect out of this, and what would the outcome be? Like, as like a product, like what's the outgoing product of that?
Right, so because there are personnel involved, the investigation itself at this point is confidential, and we are following our standard departmental policies. And we did have a meeting on this today, and I know that the investigation is in process, and I think the outcome of the investigation may be protected. We'll have to see, what information is garnered from our staff's review of the flock records. And but there may be also, as a result of that, some information that can be shared with the public. So we just have to, and it's our staff that is conducting the investigation and those most familiar with the flock system. And we're taking a look at all the records and seeing what our conclusions are with regard to those allegations.
Okay,
Yeah.
and how much will the council be informed, or will they?
We will give, I think we will give, definitely give council a follow-up on those issues. And in fact, one of the issues, we have a legal opinion that we can send out under a confidential heading too.
Okay.
So we all have talked about this, and we will provide a response in the near future as soon as the investigation.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Anything else? Okay. All right, so next is state legislative update.
So Kevin Morgan is gonna join. Oftentimes we really listen to each of you if there are things that you have heard. We did get an update today from our state lobbyist on a bill. So do want to provide a brief update to the council and provide an opportunity for feedback. Given the speed that the bill might transition, then we'll kind of step back and give an opportunity for feedback like we generally do.
Thanks, Tansy. Yeah, good evening again. Yeah, so we just wanted to provide a quick update on Senate Bill 70, which is the ban on government access historical location information database, which in other words, the bill that concerning ALPRs. So there was some movement on it today, so just wanted to provide that update. The bill did pass through Senate Appropriations Committee by a vote of 4-3. The deciding vote that passed it did reference that because the fiscal note was removed from the bill, that they think that it should have been considered, the bill should be considered by the Senate as a whole. So it did move out of Appropriations Committee. Its next step will be to go to the Senate floor for second readings. Has not, at least earlier, some before the meeting, it was not calendar, but we do expect it to move fairly quickly. Law enforcement has expressed, the law enforcement community has expressed some concerns with the bill as it's been introduced and as it's made its way through the Senate committee process. Continues to be some concerns around the bill's current warrant requirements and some provisions around information sharing. As I mentioned, likely to hit the floor over the next couple of days. Will move quickly. They do expect that the vote on the Senate floor will be close. The city's lobbyist has been reached out to by some senators, just asking about the city of Thornton's position. So just wanted to provide that update as it has moved out of the Appropriations Committee and want to give that update.
So I know the DA has given an overview to the Metro mayors about the concerns with that bill in particular related to warrants. Chief, can you give us an overview of how this might impact our ability to do business?
So if Senate Bill 70 passes, it will absolutely negatively impact public safety in the city of Thornton. The only real question is the degree to which that happens. The warrant issue is a big piece of that. However, the Police Chiefs Association, we actually have come out with strongly opposed this bill. The Sheriff's Association, CML, and like you said, the DAs all oppose it as well. There's various reasons for that. If you wanted us to get into any of the minutia of the bill, Adam would be a little bit better at that because he's been participating in the meetings, but we do believe that if it passes, that it will negatively impact public safety.
I would recommend we oppose, just based on what I've talked to Brian Mason about. I'm very concerned about our ability to be able to solve crimes. What he told us is that the first 12 to 24 hours is extremely critical, and this bill takes that effectiveness away completely. Drew.
Yeah, I take the same approach. I'd recommend we take an opposition stance there based on recommendation here and what we've heard. And then, of course, with the DA office also being concerned, that does reinforce that.
Justin?
Do you have the information on the organizations and groups that were in support or have different positions and opposed?
I can look that up really. Give me 1 minute.
While he does that, can you elaborate? I know we've talked about it previously, the warrant piece. Can you go over just the specifics of that a little bit more in detail?
Adam, you want to step up and add to this?
Yeah, so I can kick it off and then turn it over to Adam when I stray too far. But the gist of it is that the way that the bill is written with the most current amendments is that anything that we're looking to access that's more than 72 hours old requires us to get a warrant. The challenge is that a lot of times we're not getting notices on a potential crime that's occurred. Just as an example, sex assaults are generally reported kind of late. People don't report those right away. So it would require us to get a warrant, but then a lot of the information that would go to building the case for probable cause for the warrant is stuff that we would potentially be getting from the LPR system anyway. And so it's a little bit of a circular problem. Adam has anything else to add?
Right, there was an expansion in an amendment last month that did allow for the keeping of the data up to 30 days. So as a reminder, currently our processes and most municipalities' processes is accessing the data for up to 30 days without a warrant. So here, this bill would require a warrant after 72 hours and the data would have to be purged after 30 days. So the 30-day issue is really the problem. But as the chief indicated, in most kinds of investigations, time is of the essence, but there's reporting issues and everything. And the tool itself is a means to get to probable cause. So in some ways, from a law enforcement perspective, it's a cart before the horse problem. The other piece that has come up, both at the CML and the CACP, which is the Chiefs Association, is that you're all aware of the very robust discussion that's ongoing about ALPR technologies. The bill started at one level without any discussion. It was written with a very particular point of view. It's expanded a bit, but that same discussion didn't happen. It's kind of this, what was happening in the State House is the reverse of what's happening here, which is a good thing, right? It's a good public discussion to talk about what the public is willing to accept in terms of balancing, as the chief had eloquently said, balancing public safety and privacy of everybody. So that's a big picture here. And my understanding too is that the reason that it moved out of appropriations is it removed two positions that were going to be created at CBI in order to monitor compliance. So if there's not going to be any monitoring of compliance because there's no position authority on that, then that kind of begs a question of enforceability.
Anything else, Justin?
Well, I guess at this point then, does our legal team and our law enforcement think that there is no amendments to be done? There's fundamentally, this bill obstructs operations too much.
From a law enforcement perspective, from the CACP, that's been our position the entire time. This wasn't something that was savable, that it would negatively impact public safety.
Lawyers can always come up with ideas, so. But
We advise.
we advise, but that's kind of why I made the mention here. My view here is that the discussion that we've had together and continue to have is how you formulate good public policy, starting out with a very position, I don't know, starting out from one point of view very strictly and then trying to open it up is the inverse, I think, of a strong public policy discussion, right? Because you're backpedaling constantly. And as the chief mentioned, I also serve as a legislative counsel to the CACP through my role here. And that's the difficulty, is that if you start tweaking it, then it becomes a Frankenstein's monster. And that's kind of where we're at with this bill. So there's nothing, so from a legal perspective, we're not taking a policy position. Of course, my client wants to achieve something, so I'm here to help and support. And of course, if we get direction from you, also our clients, will take that. But it's challenging when you're dealing with a bill that was written with a certain point of view in mind and then trying to make it better, as opposed to coming up with a bill that's based on the discussion that we've had.
I will just add here, we don't have Peggy here with us tonight. Our standing legislative update is next week, so she'll be able to provide maybe better reflection next week. I think at a prior point, the council did give direction to express our willingness, our interest to collaborate on changes on the bill. To my knowledge, I don't believe we've gotten any specific requests, but I think Peggy could speak to that. I think the council did previously ask Peggy as our lobbyist to express our willingness or interest to collaborate on potential changes, but I don't believe there's been any specific requests.
And I think
that's in that regard.
What's changed is how quickly it's moving now. And so if we wait till next week, we won't be able to get our voices heard.
I can provide, I was able to see some positions, some organizations that have positions. So, and I should have probably started with, obviously, just a reminder that the city council direction was to amend here at Thornton. But there are a couple other local governments that are also have taken an amendment position. So the city of Aurora, Adams County, and Boulder County are all currently in an amendment position. There are quite a few municipalities, local governments that are in an opposed position. CML is in an opposed position. Dr. Cog's in an opposed position, but I could certainly go through that list of cities if you'd like. And then in terms of the support position, Boulder County is in support. The ACLU of Colorado is in support. Colorado Common Cause is for support, and just being able to pull some information fairly quickly for you there.
Kevin, could you list those cities that are oppose it?
Sure, what I wrote down really quickly, and we can get you a full list, but Colorado Springs, the city of Arvada, Commerce City, Brighton, Longmont, Lone Tree. I need some more, but then there's some associations of chiefs of police, the Association of Fire Chiefs, district attorneys. But I could probably get you a more extensive list of.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thoughts, Justin? Still on you.
Oh, I don't have any more questions.
Devin?
Do we see situations where we can see delayed times or longer times in getting warrants coming through to be able to kind of run this? Like, what's a typical warrant return time from the time request actually being granted?
From the time it's requested and goes like through the district attorney and then to the court.
Right.
It's really can vary. Some of the more serious ones can be prioritized within a day or two. Some of the others might take a little while longer. There's kind of baked in delays throughout this whole process, or I should say potential delays throughout this whole process. And so when we're trying to navigate something that is time sensitive, it's problematic.
Yeah, and that leads into my next question is, I'm assuming the 30-day time frame starts from the exact moment it's being recorded and not from access itself.
Correct. I believe that's the case.
So even trying to get a warrant, if it takes a week, 2 weeks, then you would cut it down on that time frame to be able to get into it anyway.
Correct.
So where do you stand?
Where do I stand? I think everybody knows where I stand. on this stuff.
You have to say it so that I can record.
I am very much against this law.
Chris, Parrish, Roberta, John, Dave.
I'm from above here. I'm going to shock nobody and say that I'm adamantly opposed to this as well.
Chris?
I would be opposed largely because of the position in which he said the DA's association. And to me, that is, non-biased in what they're trying to achieve ultimately in terms of public safety. I also heard more loudly the comments that Adam was able to make there in the sense of how it originated. If it was, smaller idea of one individual or a smaller group of individuals' opinions, and then now we are trying to rework it with amends, but it's not really happening, and now it's fast tracking. I agree with you also that we might miss an opportunity and then put bad legislation out there. And I would much rather see a collaborative effort and putting together, and we have our own representatives. So we want it rewritten, something that we can put to our own representatives for next year to do a more global or type approach in which we address the issue, but we do it appropriately versus trying to come out of the corner and expand and meet everybody's needs. And based on what they're saying and what I'm hearing, it's not coming together that way via amends. So I don't want it to go forward unless we have that approach. So I would oppose for now.
John?
Yeah, and I agree with my colleagues here as well, somewhat reluctantly, but still, even though I was out of town the last week, still I did notice, all the district attorneys speak up, including our own Brian Mason, who I love and respect a great deal. So in this situation, I am going to lean on District Attorney Mason's judgment, along with the other district attorneys, not to mention our police department, and I am going to be opposed.
Justin?
Yeah. I suggested we take an amend position early on because I was maybe naively hoping that there was something about this bill that could be salvaged that could work in kind of the manner that Chris talked about. But yeah, to hear Adam talk about the policy approach kind of being a little backwards on this bill, I think that joining the opposed position makes sense. So I agree with that.
Cherish or Roberta? Roberta? So we have consensus to oppose. Let us know what else you need from us, if anything. If you could let us know when it's calendar, that would be helpful.
Mayor, just I did find out it's 72 hours prior to the date of access. That's the point. So you can only go back in time, 72 hours.
So if it takes 4 days to get the warrant, then
Yeah.
it's gone anyway.
Anything else for us, Kevin?
That was all I have.
Right. With that, I think we are finished for this evening. Thank you all very much.